to talk about a research program which has been ongoing for many years, which is about managing inter-organizational collaborations. And collaboration is very much relevant to the sector at this moment in time, and that's why we're bringing it into the Centre for Voluntary Sector Leadership. That is a program that has been undertaken from the perspective of management science, and what that means is that it's concerned with developing frameworks, knowledge, concepts that are about governing, leading and managing collaborations that are hopefully useful to practice. And my job today is to try to give you an insight into the kind of knowledge that can come out of that kind of research. And it has involved working very closely with individuals who are themselves collaborating. And Deborah, you'll be pleased to know that we hardly ever ask people any questions. But what we do is we ask them to share with us their experiences, the challenges that they are facing, so that we can learn from that and we can share that with a wider community. Now, today I'm going to also talk about a current project that Dr. Janet Diamond and I are working on. Janet is in the audience today. Thank you for coming, Janet. And our project is about exploring collaborative leadership in the context of children's services in England. So this is very much a context that is characterized by turbulence, austerity, and now Brexit. And the program has involved working very closely with individuals who are very experienced at collaborating and have been doing that for many years. I know that maybe one or two of you are in the audience today, and I want to, although you and others who have been involved in the research will need to remain anonymous, I just want to thank you for sharing your time with us. Without you, the research just would not be possible at all. So thank you very much for that. So, the rhetoric about collaboration continues to be overwhelmingly positive, and there are lots of examples in the media that highlights the merits of collaboration. Voluntary sector organizations, as we know, are often sought after partners in collaboration because of their skills, their areas of expertise, their closeness to the communities, and so on. And indeed, their inclusion as partners is often required in bids for government funding, for example. And so there are many examples where collaboration is of benefit to smaller voluntary sector organizations because it enables them to have the capacity to win contracts, public sector contracts, for example. And so undoubtedly collaboration gives smaller voluntary sector organizations access to funds that they would otherwise not have access to. So collaboration has a lot to offer in terms of pulling together organizations' experiences, resources, and expertise in ways that enables organizations to deliver something that they couldn't deliver on their own. However, there are probably people in the audience who would like to elicit a groan at this point, because we do know that collaboration is not easy, especially if you're collaborating across organizational, professional, and sometimes sector boundaries as well. At the same time, austerity and public sector cuts means that there is call for the sector to collaborate just now. And it is as if collaboration is the answer to austerity and public sector cuts. And so that then gives us the question, can greater collaboration within the voluntary sector meet the challenges of austerity and public sector cuts? So that's the question that we're going to have at the back of our minds as we go through this. Okay, so let's just look at what individuals who collaborate say about their experiences of collaboration. So there are lots of reasons why individuals benefit from collaboration, individuals and their organizations. So here is a community representative who says, well, we found an IT solution to sharing information when everyone told us we couldn't do it. It's really hard work, but it's really, really satisfying when you can see the difference it's making to some families where we've made a huge, huge difference. We brought together the public, private and voluntary sector to create a project that is unique in the UK. So when collaboration works, when it works well, you can feel inspired and you can feel that collaborative energy. And these are the kind of sentiments that are wrapped up in the notion of collaborative advantage. Something is achieved that could not have been achieved without the collaboration. And that is the guiding light when organizations are collaborating. However, individuals also talk about the difficulties of collaboration. And here are some of the things that they say. So the best way of ultimately achieving outcomes is through partnerships. And you'll never get that unless you do it. But it's the hardest part of the job. We are partners one day and competitors the next, which puts a strain on our relationship. We've been cuddling each other for 10 years, but we've made little progress. The collaboration has worked out, but oh boy, it has caused pain. So these are the kind of sentiments that we capture in the notion of collaborative advantage, that often the rate of output is slow, and even successful outcomes involve pain and hard grind. So we have then this tension between collaborative advantage and collaborative inertia. On the one hand, organizations are collaborating because they want to achieve something that they otherwise couldn't have achieved, but in practice, collaborative inertia is often the outcome. So the question then for research is, why does inertia rather than advantage happen? And what is it that we need to do from a governing leadership management perspective in order to increase the chances for advantage? And the way in which we have explored that question is to look at the kind of issues that individuals who collaborate say are causing anxiety and reward. And these are the kind of issues that they tend to talk about again and again and again. And so, not surprisingly, there are issues to do with the fact that organizations have different aims and therefore they need to take different things away from the collaboration. There are issues to do with different organizational cultures, difference to do with lack of trust, power imbalances, and so on. What we're going to look at today, though, just a little bit, is leadership, because that is particularly relevant to what the Centre is trying to do at the moment. I'm not saying that we can look at leadership in isolation of all these other issues, but that's what we're going to try and focus a little bit on today. Okay, so leadership, collaborative leadership, or leadership in inter-organizational collaborative context, why is that different to leadership within an organization? Now, this is partly to do with the fact that the issues that organizations are working on sit in the inter-organizational domain. When public sector and voluntary sector organizations collaborate, it's usually because they're trying to tackle some very difficult issues to do with, for example, vulnerable children and their families, to do with social exclusion, to do with age concerns, and a whole host of issues that are ill-defined and wicked in nature. And so what that means is that leadership is situated in the context of interacting organizational hierarchies. So you have organizations who have come together who are very different in size, different in cultures, different ways of doing things, and so on. And it means, for example, that there isn't a leader with whom the buck stops. Rather, leadership tends to be shared by a number of individuals who bring diverse resources, experiences, and expertise to the collaboration. And indeed, it's the pulling together of that expertise that enables individuals to find innovative solutions to wicked issues. All right, so there are probably loads of other reasons why leadership in collaborative context is different from organizational context, but those are some of those. So I said we're going to look a little bit at the current project that Janet and I are working on, which is to do with looking at the challenges that individuals and organizations face, because there is an increasing need to sort of needing to do more with less because of austerity and cut. And I'm going to start with a quote from one of the individuals that Janet interviewed, which is, how do you lead in circumstances where you've got this huge amount of change going on? There is huge uncertainty, these big structural shifts going on in society. So how do you lead in that context? I'm going to look at some of the experiences that they shared with us. So the first set of issues is around understanding the ways in which different contexts interact. And so individuals who have experience of working in both voluntary and public sector organizations, such as local government, health services, education, and so on, often compare the characteristics of the voluntary sector with the public sector. And they often say that the voluntary sector is a lot more flexible than the public sector, for example. And that flexibility is manifest in individuals having more autonomy, working with policies that are less restrictive, procedures that are less restrictive, and so on. And what that means is that individuals are able to think outside the box, and it gives them that flexibility, perhaps, to find innovative ways of tackling difficult issues. And so there are benefits of collaborating with the voluntary sector. There is that softness of the space in which you can step in and collaborate. Now, individuals contrast this with the public sector. They also talk about the benefits of the public sector. The fact that it is more hierarchical maybe introduces a bit of order on the complex collaborative situations. And so they would say that the hierarchy means that you understand the politics, you understand the structure, you understand the module, and whilst you might not agree with it, you kind of understand how it works. So there are some benefits from working in collaboratively in the public sector as well. Now, the point in terms of collaborative leadership is that leaders need to understand the ways in which different contexts that are relevant to a collaboration come together, and what that means in terms of making things happen in those contexts. The last set of issues that we've picked on, now this research is very current, so we're still making sense of the data, if you like, but we think it's quite interesting what's coming out. And the last set of issues is around recognizing that leadership is ultimately about managing relationships. Okay? And that for the collaborative leader, that involves managing difficult relationships as well. It might involve challenging people who are actually commissioning you to do work. It might involve alienating individuals and organizations who are not helpful in terms of moving the collaboration in the direction that you want to move it, so that in the end you end up with a hardcore who are actually going to help you make a difference. And so what this seems to suggest is that though collaborative leadership is about managing relationships, what is challenging is managing those difficult relationships, and that's part and parcel of what needs to happen. Okay, so if we carry on looking at collaborative leadership in these kind of contexts, in many different contexts, which we have done, we can see that there are some similarities between the kind of activities that individual leaders undertake. And there are 4 sort of broad categories of activities that are undertaken in the spirit of in the spirit of collaboration. And each of these have their own challenges associated with them. So the first one is maybe thinking about embracing the right kind of members. And one of the challenges there is, how do you get the stakeholders that you need around the table? Versus thinking about individuals and organizations who would like to be involved, who are maybe not as central to the collaboration as you would like them to be. So there's kind of a tension there, and there are other challenges too. Empowering is about recognizing that you need to create an infrastructure where individuals with very different skills can be enabled to participate and contribute to the collaboration. Involving is similarly about recognizing that organizations and individuals will have different bases of power. They will not all be as important to the collaboration as others, and so you need to kind of manage the tension between perhaps organizations who are important and who will feel disempowered in the collaboration. And the last one is about mobilizing organizations' resources and recognizing that if you are going to get organizations to give some of their resources to the collaboration, then they need to have something in return. And that something in return will be different for each of the organizations because they've come together because they have different things to offer, and therefore they will also need to take different things away. All right, so embracing, empowering, involving, and mobilizing are the kind of activities that are undertaken in the spirit of collaboration. But that isn't enough, usually. As we saw from some of the examples that we shared earlier, it also entails slight sort of manipulative behavior, perhaps. It's not likely, if you have a collaboration with many members involved, that you are going to have consensus all the time. And so the collaborative leader may have to impose their own understanding on members and perhaps do that in a slightly sort of stealthy way. Okay? And politics. All organizations are political, but the voluntary sector and collaborations are not immune to that. So it's about understanding what the political undercurrents between members are and finding out who it is with whom you need to collaborate, build trust, and so on. Okay, so you have a tension then, which says that leadership is about making things happen in the spirit of collaboration with a little bit of directive leadership. And we don't have any hard evidence for this, but it would seem that individuals who are successful collaborative leaders are able to operate from both perspectives and switch between them all the time. And so that might be a bit like collaboration means going behind people's back in a trustworthy kind of way. Right. So there's a lot more to this research in terms of the challenges that individuals are experiencing, and I'm sure that those of you who collaborate, you know what it feels like. So what we can conclude is that collaborations are by nature inefficient. So what does that mean for our question? It probably means that collaborations are extremely resource-consuming and that they should be used sparingly. They are not a way of saving resources, not all the time anyway, and that energy should be reserved for situations where real collaborative advantage can be envisaged. Achieving collaborative advantage requires compromise, energy, commitment, and care, and from the leader it requires a lot of nurture, nurture, nurture. And so then the question is, what do you nurture? We think that collaborative leadership involves understanding the complexity. In the voluntary sector, it's been a very changing landscape. The skills that you started with aren't necessarily the skills that you need. So that points to a sort of continuous need for leadership development. Okay, accepting the pain. It's the hardest part of the job. Allocating enough time. Sometimes you have to meander a little to get on the right road. And knowing what to nurture. I am beginning to understand what's going on. Recognizing that for individuals who want to lead in collaborative situations, it might take a little while to understand how each individual collaboration operates and what might work. Okay. In terms of sort of knowing what to nurture, what we would like to suggest is that the center might have some tools that you can use as conceptual handles to aid your thinking. And if you think that is the case, do get in touch with us and we'll help if we can. If we don't have the tools, and if you think that you will be able to work with us in this sort of co-production of knowledge, then let us know.